The lamp in the corner casts a long, sharp shadow across the room. Anton stands perfectly still, his eyes locked onto the lens. He is 29 years old. He is worth $1 million. The silence of the room breaks as the phone vibrates against the wooden table.
It is his mother. She does not call to celebrate a milestone or share a success.
She calls because she is worried about his rent. Her voice fills the space, trembling with a gentle,
misplaced concern. She asks if he is struggling to make ends meet. She asks if he needs help.
Anton listens to the static on the line, his face unmoving in the dim light. To her, he is a man barely keeping his head above water. To the world, he is a failure of a son. He grips the edge of the table, his knuckles white, and lets the silence stretch. He does not correct her. He does not mention the balance in his accounts. He simply nods at the camera, acknowledging the irony of his invisible reality. The $1 million sits in the dark,
silent and unseen, while his mother continues to whisper her fears into the receiver.
The call ends. Anton sets the phone down. He walks to the window and looks out at the street. His car sits under the dim glow of a flickering streetlight. 7 years of rust and worn tires. It is the same vehicle he drove when he finished school. He turns back to his room. A calendar on the wall shows no travel, no vacations, just the same routine for 24 consecutive months. He opens his closet. A single piece of outerwear hangs there, the same one he wore to the family dinner 3 years ago. His relatives see these things, and they calculate a life of scarcity. They see a man who cannot afford a new car or a week away from his desk. They see a man who recycles the same layers for every holiday gathering. They measure his success by the freshness of his possessions and find him lacking. They pity him because they believe his poverty is a trap he cannot escape. Anton touches the fabric of his sleeve, feeling the thinness of the material. He understands their perspective. To them, he is sinking. To him, every worn thread is a calculated choice. He is not failing. He is simply waiting for the math to finish its work. The memory pulls back 10 years. Anton was 19, holding his first real paycheck in a world that demanded he spend it. His peers moved with a singular purpose. They hit the mall the moment the ink dried on their stubs. They traded their labor for sneakers that would lose their tread in a month. They bought dinner at places that served status on a plate. They chased the latest tech until their bank balances hit zero. The pressure was a physical weight, a constant hum in the background suggesting that to earn was to consume. Anton stood in the middle of this rush. He held his own check. He felt the pull of the store windows, the urge to match the pace of everyone around him. He looked at the numbers on the paper. He looked at the life his friends were building, a life of temporary upgrades and fleeting relevance. He made a choice then. He did not buy the shoes. He did not book the trip. He did not upgrade his room. He locked his lifestyle in place, anchored it to the ground, and refused to let it drift upward. He kept the exact expenses he had as a student. Every dollar that remained after the basics was diverted away from the light. He chose the slow path while the rest of the world sprinted toward a finish line that kept moving further away. The store aisle became his training ground. Every week, the same fluorescent hum, the same tile floors, and the same shelf-level decisions. Anton stood before the cereal selection. To his left, the vibrant boxes, the mascots, the premium pricing that promised a better morning. To his right, the plain packaging, the generic labels, the cost-efficient reality. He reached for the store brand box. He felt the cardboard texture, the lack of gloss, the weight of a choice that most people never bothered to make. He placed it in his cart. It was a small movement, barely worth noting, but it was the engine of his entire strategy. He walked past the aisles of flashy tech and impulse snacks, his cart remaining light, his focus fixed on the total at the register. He did not feel deprived. He felt the cold satisfaction of physics. Each dollar he saved here was a brick in a foundation he was building in the dark. He navigated the store with the precision of a technician. He compared unit prices, ignored the marketing displays, and kept his spending exactly where it had been at 19. He was not buying food, he was buying his future. Every item he skipped was a transfer of wealth from a corporation back into his own silent, growing accounts. He moved to the checkout, paid the exact amount he had budgeted, and walked out into the night. The grocery savings were only the beginning. Anton moved the surplus into a digital void, a brokerage account that operated outside his daily awareness. He set a strict rule: 40% of every paycheck vanished before he could even see it. It was not a struggle, it was an automated rhythm. He ignored the headlines. When the market dipped, he did not panic. When it surged, he did not celebrate. He simply contributed. He treated the market like a slow-moving tide, predictable and indifferent to his presence. He never touched the principal. He watched the interest generate its own interest, a quiet, invisible expansion that happened while he slept. 10 years of this monotonous math transformed his account. It was not a sudden windfall. It was the result of thousands of small, calculated transfers. He accepted steady, incremental growth, rejecting the high-risk gambles that tempted his peers. He watched his balance climb, not through luck, but through the relentless, boring consistency of time. He was building a wall of capital, brick by brick, in the dark. By the time the decade passed, the engine was self-sustaining. He had successfully removed emotion from his financial life, leaving only the cold, hard efficiency of the numbers. He did not look at the screen to feel rich. He looked at it to confirm that the machine was still running. The dinner table was set for 6, but it felt like an interrogation chamber. The sound of silverware against china was the only rhythm for a moment, until his uncle cleared his throat. The conversation shifted, as it always did, toward the economy and the rising cost of living. Anton watched them. They leaned in, voices lowered with a practiced,
performative concern. They talked about the difficulty of finding stable work and the necessity of side hustles to keep the lights on.
One relative reached across the table, tapping his arm with a hand that radiated patronizing sympathy. They suggested he look for extra hours, maybe even a weekend shift at the warehouse, to help cover his rent. They spoke of his car as a liability, and his budget as a failure. Anton felt the heat of the room rise. Every word they spoke was a brick of judgment, built on the false assumption that he was failing. He saw their eyes scanning his movements, searching for signs of the struggle they were certain he was enduring. The air grew thick with their pity. He sat pinned under their collective gaze, the weight of their misconceptions pressing into his chest. He was a stranger in his own family, holding a secret that would shatter their entire narrative if he chose to speak it. He did not speak. He kept his hands flat on the table, still, and waited for the next wave of advice to break against him. The silence stretched, heavy and expectant. They waited for his gratitude, for the admission of defeat that would make them feel superior. Anton picked up his glass. The condensation felt cold against his palm. He took a slow, deliberate sip. He watched the way his uncle tapped his fingers on the tablecloth, impatient for a response. He could have ended it in a single sentence. He could have recited the balance of his brokerage account, watched the color drain from their faces, and transformed their pity into stunned shock. He held the power of that revelation in his throat, but he let it pass. He swallowed the water and set the glass down with a soft, controlled click against the wood. He did not blink. He did not offer a defense. He realized, with startling clarity, that their pity was a reflection of their own insecurity, not his status. To explain himself would be to seek their approval, and he had outgrown that need years ago. He leaned back, his spine straight against the chair. He watched them continue to talk, their voices becoming nothing more than background static. The urge to correct them vanished. He found a strange, sharp focus in the realization that he no longer required an audience to validate his worth. He was the only one in the room who knew the truth, and that was enough. The world outside this room operates on a different, louder frequency. It equates wealth with the roar of a high-end engine on a city street or the fleeting glamour of a vacation captured in a photograph. It demands constant, public proof. People lease the appearance of success, trading their future for the immediate, shallow validation of a luxury brand. They travel to places they cannot afford to impress people they do not like. This is the theater of wealth. It is expensive, fragile, and entirely hollow. Anton looked at the table again, seeing the same patterns. The need to be seen, to be confirmed, to be envied. He realized then that the moment you stop performing, you start owning. Ownership does not require an audience. It does not need a new car to signal status or a curated trip to prove a lifestyle. True wealth is silent. It is the discipline to keep a jacket for years while your peers chase the next trend. It is the refusal to prove your worth to anyone. It is the quiet, daily grind of redirecting capital rather than consuming it. When you stop trying to convince the world that you are wealthy, you finally become free to actually be it. You do not need a new life. You need a new decision. The path to $1 million is not paved with luck or viral hits. It is built in the dark, through the monotonous, calculated math of a decade. Look at your own rhythm. Every purchase is a choice. Every dollar spent is a vote for your current reality. Freeze it. Lock your spending at a level you can sustain indefinitely. Redirect the surplus into the void of the market. Let the numbers compound while the world sleeps. This is the mechanism of true wealth. It is not a lifestyle. It is the refusal to prove your worth to anyone. Stop the performance. Kill the need for external validation. When you stop buying status, you start buying time. You start buying freedom. The world will watch you and see only a person just getting by. Let them. Let them believe you are struggling. While they chase the flash and the noise, you are building the foundation. The math is simple. The discipline is hard. But the outcome is absolute. You are the architect of your own silence. Decide now. Freeze the spending. Redirect the excess. Let time do the work. One day, you will wake up with everything, while the rest of the world is still trying to look the part. The lamp flickers once, casting the room into a deep, steady stillness. Anton sits back,
his hands resting flat on the table. The silence here is heavy, but it is not empty. It is the sound of a decade of compound interest.
Outside, the world is still spinning on its axis of noise, judging, comparing, and projecting its expectations onto everyone it touches. They still see the man who does not travel, the man who lives in the same routine, the man who they think is barely surviving. He watches the shadow cross the wall and feels no urge to correct them. Their misunderstanding is his final shield. It keeps him invisible, and in that invisibility, he is untouchable. He does not need the approval of the people who think his life is small. He knows what is behind the curtain. He knows the weight of the portfolio that nobody else can see. He stares into the lens, his expression unchanging,
grounded in the absolute certainty of his own freedom. Let them keep their opinions. Let them keep their status. He will keep his wealth. The game is over, and he has already won. He holds the gaze for a heartbeat,
then slowly turns away, leaving the room to its quiet, perfect, and private success.